Dignitaries, learned delegates, and respected teachers, a very good morning to one and all. Dear participants, since last 1 year, corona pandemic has influenced each and every person globally. We have been informed to keep social distancing and we could meet our dear and near ones only through virtual models. This was possible only because of technology. There is a similarity between technology and teachers that both have to update and upgrade themselves regularly. It is said that technology cannot replace teachers, but technology in the hands of great teachers will surely bring transformation. I really feel proud that we all teachers have upgraded ourselves and continued academic since last 1 year. And I'm very sure that whatever the challenge be, we all could overcome it using modern technological tools. And considering this fact, we at Modern College of Pharmacy Nigdi have chosen the topic for short-term training program as Innovations in Effective Teaching Learning Pedagogy and Research Skill Development. I, Mrs. Rupali Jinturkar, welcome you all at this AICT sponsored 6 days short term training program on behalf of convener Dr. P.D. Chowdhury, Principal MCOP, and Coordinator Dr. V.V. Chopre, Associate Professor MCOP, Nigdi, Pune. Yesterday, we had inaugural function in the precious presence of our chief guest, Dr. Rajendra Kakade, advisor AICT, and later we had two sessions. First session speaker was Dr. Muhammad Salahuddin, Principal Farooqi College of Pharmacy, Mysore. He enlightened the topic Innovations in Life Sciences and Newer Technologies, the Future Evolving Roles of Pharmacists. And second session was conducted by Professor Sunil Chikurumkar, Vice President, Business Development Group Pharmaceuticals, Bangalore. He guided on topic Delivering Superior Learning Experiences, a Need of Today. Moving on, today we have two sessions by our eminent speakers, Dr. Munir Ahmed and Dr. V. Gopal sir. First session will be conducted by Dr. Munir Ahmed sir. Welcome sir. Before we start, I would like to give a brief introduction about him. Sir has completed his BSc in Teaching Technology from Sikkim Manipal University, Gangtok. Then he pursued International TESOL Diploma, that is Teaching English to Students of Other Language from Australia, and then PG Diploma in Medical Education, University of South Wales, United Kingdom. He is having about 30 years of experience in academics at various levels of pharmacy education, and currently he is working as professor in Government Homeopathic Medical College, Bengaluru. Talking about his management skills, Sir has completed his MBA in Education Management and also completed Level 5 Diploma in Learning and Development, Leadership and Management Skills from UK Professional Development Academy, London. Along with managerial skills, he also have administrative skills and he is working as director at Rajiv Gandhi University of Health Science, Karnataka. He has been honored with Best Teacher Award by Rajiv Gandhi University of Health Sciences, Karnataka. Also, Srimati Kamla Ben Vavia Memorial Award for Outstanding Contribution to Association of Pharmaceutical Teachers of India and Professor Prahlad Vadgaonkar Memorial Best Teacher Award. It is our privilege to have you here, sir. All delegates are requested to actively attend all these sessions as your attendance is being continuously monitored by our technical team. Now I request you, sir, to please proceed with your session. And you are the host of this session now. Then, hello, sir. Ask to you. Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, your host now.
No, you'll have to permit me to.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Done.
Yeah. Thank you and welcome everybody to this session. At the outset, let me thank the Modern College of Pharmacy, NIGDI Pune management, and also the principal and his team, Dr. Praveen Chaudhary and his team, for having given this opportunity to uh, connect with you, to interact with you on this session on educational methodology. The topic of this session is innovative pedagogical approaches and paradigm shift in teaching learning process. So when we talk of these innovative pedagogical approaches and the second component, paradigm shift in teaching learning process, these are the things that we have been experiencing very intensely in the past 1 year and more so in the past 6 months because of certain reasons that we all are aware. One thing is certain that in the past few years, we have been exposed to certain social disruptions, like the way we travel, the way we purchase our groceries, our goods, the way we stay somewhere in the hotels, or the way we make payments. In many ways, we have been exposed to a lot of technological disruptions, and we had accepted these also. But what happened was we were only using these for our other kind of social transactions, but these had not much affected our academic transactions. In the past 1 year, what we have seen is there is a sea change in the way we view the academic performances, the way we teach, the way we conduct assessment, and all these academic things have undergone a sea change in the last year, and exactly the same way that we have been disrupted by the social technologies, like whether it is purchasing on Amazon or on Zomato or making a payment on Paytm. These are the technological changes which have affected us. Similarly, the technological changes like using of the WebEx or Zoom or Skype, or even using the live transmission of Facebook Live or YouTube have been, these have become the norm in the past one year. And minded, we have not accepted these as a kind of planned change. These have come something like a kind of tsunami, a kind of sudden disruptor, and we have been using this by compulsion. No, the question is, do we also always have to use things by compulsion, or can we make a proper planning for this adaptation? Because when the technology is there, technology can be a double-edged tool. When we say innovation, the innovation can either make us or break us. If we use them in a planned manner, this can be a very good success story. Or if we fail to adapt to them, or we fail to adapt them for our purposes, then it becomes a totally disastrous story. So therefore, we have seen both sides of it. We have seen the areas where the technology adoption has been a very huge success, and similarly, there are also instances where this technology has become a kind of a disruptor, and it has become a hurdle for many of our activities. Now, to bring about a kind of understanding on how technology can be adapted to our conventional teaching and how our conventional teaching can be enriched by the use of technology, this session is being presented. At the end of this session, you will be in a position to state the disruptive processes which are influencing our routine, which we already have discussed how the various applications or apps, these have influenced our daily routine. We already have discussed it. Then retrospect, reflect on the changes of academic practices in the past year. Now, this is what each one of us can do individually, because each of us have a different perspective. Each of us have a different experience on the way the changes have happened in the academic practices in the past year. On the basis of these reflections, we can build how we can improve and improvise on whatever the next level of training that we do. And recall your responses to the technology intrusion, how you have responded. When this technology has come about, what was your response and how did you adapt it? So the first three objectives that I have set for this are something which are very personal, which are very individual, which you can reflect on and see how things have happened to yourself. And this is one way of realizing what is our potential, what we are doing, and how we can improve. Because unless we know what we are, unless I know what I am, I cannot do anything which is really appropriate. Because if I do not know what I am, I do not know what I have to do. Therefore, first thing is to understand what I am and what my strength and weaknesses is. These are the three objectives which will tell us what our strengths and weaknesses are. Beyond that, I'll be presenting to you certain tools which we use in the education methodology. One is relating to the spiral of curriculum and how to plan our academic planning. The second tool will be relating to the achieving a technological balance for academic quality. And third is tabulate what are the applications that are relevant for specific academic situations. So these are the objectives that I have set for this session. By the end of the session, we'll revisit these objectives and check how much we have been able to achieve these things. And as you look at these statements, one thing would be very clear to you. Whatever objectives that I have listed here, tell what you as a participant would be able to do by the end of the session. What I do during the session is secondary to what you will be able to achieve. The primary is what you are going to achieve by the end of the session. Let me start with a quotation by Jack Bernard Shaw, who said, "Progress is impossible without change, and those who cannot change their minds cannot change anything." What is important, what is central to any change?
Hello, sir. Background voice is coming.
Sorry.
Sorry, sir. Some background voice is coming, so it is giving disturbance.
Unmuted. Please ask everybody to mute. Somebody has, yeah. I request all the participants to mute your audio. Yeah, I think it is clear. Is it clear?
Yes, sir. Now it is clear. Thank you, sir.
Okay, let me start with the quotation by Jack Bernard Shaw, who said, "Progress is impossible without change, and those who cannot change their minds cannot change anything." So basically, it is our mind which is important, and what we require to understand is our mind. That is what I said initially. We have to understand what we are. So when we understand what we are, we understand what our mind is. So the first mind test that I'm going to give in this session is to present this image. You can see this is something like a petrol pump where the person fills the vehicle with the fuel. And as you can see here, the teacher is filling curriculum to the student or force filling the student with the curriculum. Now, our question is, does this always work? I don't think it will always work, because anything that is done forcefully is not something which is acceptable. This is one understanding that we have, is that we cannot force feed anybody about anything, especially when we are talking of teaching. Why? The reason is, all the educational activities, in all educational activities, learner is the focus. So let us all remember this dictum: learner is the focus of all educational activity. Once we understand this, then everything fits into the kind of scheme where the student becomes...
बच्चों नाम भी लिखो तुम्हारे फोटो के नीचे. मेरे पास किसी का नंबर सेव नहीं है. नाम रोल नंबर मेंशन करो.
Can you please mute? Hello? Somebody has switched on their audio, please switch off. There's too much of background noise there. Okay. So the understanding is that student or learner is the focus of all educational activity. Therefore, all educational activities have to be designed around okay, can you hear now? Okay. So all the educational activities have to be designed around the learner. Hopefully nothing, no more technical glitches will happen in future. Now, one of the tools, I'll be presenting 3 tools for designing the activities. One is called as the curriculum design. When we say curriculum design, curriculum is the basic for all our presentations, for all our learnings. So this curriculum, when we say, the curriculum has 3 components. One is setting the learning objectives. Learning objectives is at the end of the session or at the end of the learning, at the end of the course, what the participants would be able to do. So the statements that we say, the outcomes that we say will become learning objectives. This is the starting point for any educational activity. Once we set what is a learning objective, the second component in this curriculum design is to assign what are the teaching learning methods and media. Now, once we say the student will be able to perform a certain activity or be able to do certain thing, the way we enable the student, the way we help the student to achieve that activity or that outcome is through something called as teaching learning methods or the medium. So these are the 2 things, teaching learning methods, medium. As you can see on the screen, the learning objectives and the teaching learning methods and media, these are interrelated. For example, when we say what is the teaching learning method, the teaching learning method would be dependent on the nature of the learning objective. Let me give an example. If you expect the student to be able to state what is a chemical formula of a particular compound, it is something that student has to recall. For the student to recall, it is about knowledge. Now, what happens here is the student to recall whatever knowledge, the teacher can help by giving a lecture. The teacher can help by making the student understand what is that chemical formula. A lecture would be appropriate for it. On the other hand, if the student has to perform an experiment, if the teacher gives a lecture about how to perform an experiment, I don't think anybody will be able to in a position to perform an experiment by listening to a lecture. On the other hand, for performing that experiment, the teacher would have to demonstrate to the student how to perform it. So what you can see here is the teaching learning method is based on the nature of the learning objective. Therefore, understanding the learning objective is central to any teaching learning activity. So once we state what is the teaching learning method and implement it, the next level is the student starts learning. When the student has started learning and after the student has started learning, we'll have to check whether the learning has happened or not. And that is conducted by assessment. We conduct assessment. Here also you can see that the assessment methods are dependent on the nature of learning objective. If you take the same example, if you want to know whether the student has learned what is a chemical formula, you can ask a question in the theory in the Viva, asking the student what is the chemical nature of the formula, what is the chemical formula. On the other hand, if you want to check whether the student is able to perform an experiment, if you give a question in the theory, or if you ask in the Viva, are you able to perform this experiment, or explain how to perform this experiment, the student may explain, but what is the guarantee that the student is able to perform? So what we require is that the student should be able to perform, and to understand, to know whether the student is able to perform or not, we'll ask the student to demonstrate that experiment. Now you can see here the nature of the learning objective. It dictates what should be the teaching learning method and what could be the assessment method. So statement of the learning objective is the basic for any planning of the educational activity. And the third dimension of this is the assessment methods and teaching learning methods are also interrelated. The success of teaching learning method can be seen in the performance of the student during assessment, and the assessment of a student will be dependent on the quality of the teaching learning method. So this is called as a spiral of curriculum, one of the tools. Now expanding this tool, what we have is something called as the basic teaching model. In the basic teaching model, this is what all the teachers universally adapt as a teaching model. I'm only giving words to that. I'm only giving an explanation to this. We start by using the education objectives and say that the student will be able to perform this. And after we state what is educational objective, naturally there would be a feeling that we can go for teaching. We can go directly from the teaching, from objectives to teaching. No, you cannot directly go into teaching right from the objective. There is one more activity that you'll have to do, because this is also something that all the teachers do it as a part of their routine in the class. As soon as we enter into the class, if it is a continuation of the previous day's class, there is a kind of tradition where the teacher asks a few questions about the previous class. The purpose of this is to refresh the students' memory regarding the previous class, so that you can anchor today's class into previous class, because there is a continuity. And unless there is a continuity, unless you know, unless you can be sure that the student knows some background of whatever we are going to teach today, we cannot be sure whether the student is going to learn it. Therefore, there are certain things which the student must know before he or she enters into the classroom, into the any learning activity. This is called as entry behavior assessment. Entry behavior assessment is a psychological term, it's an educational psychology term. What it means is, at the entry level, at the beginning of learning, what the student already knows. It could be in the form of knowledge, skill, or attitude, whichever it is, what the student already knows. Assess it and then go further into the teaching. Then comes the teaching. After teaching, naturally, there is assessment. And once the assessment is done, this assessment gives a feedback to tell how effective the teaching was, or whether the entry behavior assessment was properly assessed or not, and whether the objectives were appropriately set or not. So this is a kind of formula to tell how the students have been successful. Suppose there is an exam which was conducted and the students have not performed well in a particular exam, in a particular topic, wherever, whatever it is. If you want to know what could be the reason why the students have not performed well, then the reasons could be among any of these four. One, it could be whether the teaching learning method was appropriate or not, whether the entry behavior was assessed initially or not, or whether the objectives were clearly stated or understood by the student or by the evaluator, whether this could be one problem. Or third problem could be whether the assessment itself, the fourth problem, it is whether the assessment itself was appropriate or not. So this is called as the basic teaching model, which all of us use. And I'm giving you a kind of a structure for this understanding, so that when you are faced with some dilemma, you are faced with some confusion, you can go back and refer to this model and check where the problem lies. And the third tool that I'm going to present is, before I present, just look at this image. Suppose you want to identify or pick one book from here, how easy it would be. Not very easy, I'm sure. Or how easy it would be in this stack of books. The reason is, in this arrangement, we have organized the books by a pre-plan. There's a planning which is already done to say which book will be in what situation, or in what are the books that are arranged in a particular fashion. So this planning is very important. Planning means to determine in advance what has to be done. And this tool of planning what has to be done in advance is based on something called as Bloom's taxonomy. And this Bloom's taxonomy consists of 3 components. When you say Bloom's taxonomy, taxonomy is a word which we all are familiar with. Taxonomy simply means classification. What happens is in education, there are some areas where classification is done. Like for example, when we teach something, the entire teaching can be classified into 3 areas. One is called as knowledge area, whatever the student remembers, whatever the student recalls, whatever the student can help to decide on the decision making. These are called as cognitive domain. Cognitive is knowledge based. So the learning can be cognitive, learning can be in the knowledge area. The second area of learning that can happen is in the psychomotor domain. Psychomotor domain means something which is skill based, what the student can do using the hands and fingers. This is called as psychomotor domain. And the third is called as affective domain. Affective domain is something to do with the values that we have towards a particular issue or event, or it could even be something like communication. You want to speak to somebody, or the way we behave ourselves in the society or in the team. These constitute affective domain. The reason why this is important is when you look at the education, when we look at our teaching, there are a lot of things that we have to teach, and unless there is some tool to organize these properly in certain fashion, it becomes very difficult not only to teach but also to assess. Suppose you want to assess a student whether he or she knows certain things, or whether the student is able to perform certain things, or whether the student is able to cope up with some distress or some stressful condition. We cannot mix up all these things to conduct the assessment or to teach. There have to be certain areas which are specific to particular method of learning. So that is why the psychologists have classified this entire learning into 3 zones called as cognitive domain, psychomotor domain, affective domain. Very simply to state, when you read some statement of learning and you think what it is, and that statement makes you to think what it is, that becomes cognitive domain. Cognitive domain statement is the one which makes you to think or to act upon for deciding. Psychomotor domain is the one when you read the statement, it makes you to perform something. That statement expects you to perform something, to do something by hands and fingers. And when you read something as a statement, when the statement is presented to you, and if the statement expects you to speak out something, communicate something, or show some value towards certain things, that becomes affective domain. Please remember, it is affective domain, not affection or effective domain. The spelling is very specific here. So let me give you one small activity here to identify what could be the different domains. I'll give 3 examples here. Suppose there is something like classify nutraceuticals. If you read this statement makes us to think how to classify. What is the classification? I'm not doing anything. I'm only thinking, what are nutraceuticals? How do we classify? So therefore, it becomes cognitive domain because it is only about thinking. Let us look at the second statement. Isolate caffeine from the given sample. Now, to isolate caffeine from whatever given sample that is given, just by thinking how to isolate caffeine is not sufficient. The student will have to perform some activity to isolate this. So the student is expected to perform something, use his or her hands and fingers. Therefore, this becomes psychomotor domain. Knowledge is central to this. Knowledge is basic to this. But beyond this, the student has to perform, cannot stop at the level of knowing something. And the third sample, you work actively as a member of healthcare team. So to work actively as a healthcare team, it is not just the knowledge which is required. Knowledge, of course, has to be required, but there has to be some kind of a feeling or a value which is important. Without having that kind of a feeling or value, a person cannot work as a member of healthcare team. So this becomes affective domain, where there is a value or communication. All these things come up together for the affective domain. So this is one kind of a very basic example that I have given to you, how the educational objectives are and how these are to be stated. Now let me also tell you in a very brief manner what is the importance or what are the functions of these educational objectives. If the educational objectives are not there, what would happen? And if we have the educational objectives, how these would be helpful. The first thing is, we already discussed all educational activity. Student is the focus of all educational activity. Now, if you want to say student is the focus of all educational activity, then the activity the student do has to be student directed. The educational objectives when we write, we can write the objectives as student directed. In fact, if you reflect on whatever the objectives, 6 objectives I stated for this session, each of the objectives said what you as a participant will be able to do at the end of the session. It did not say, none of the objectives said what I will do. So when you write the objectives, the objectives can create a direction for student directedness. This is one function. The second function is when the objectives are written, the objectives shift the focus of learning from the mere what of learning to how of learning. The quality of learning, the procedures of learning, and all these things will get into the system when we write the objectives. So it becomes easier to plan the activities also. And the third function of educational objectives, I would rate this very highly and say that this is one of the most important function of educational objective. Before that, you look at this image, there's a railway track that is being laid. And when you complete this picture, what you can see here is a discrepancy there. What has happened is the person who is laying the track from the left side and the person who is laying the track from the right side do not have communication with one another, and we come to this state. Similar is the state that would happen in our educational activities also, especially in the examination. As a teacher, I will be teaching something, stating to my student that this is important, this is important. And when they sit for the exam, the question paper comes, and the question paper is also set by some teacher like me, who also thinks something is important, something is important. And my important and his or her important may not be the same. These may not be the same. Therefore, we see this kind of situation in the exam. And the third activity, what happens here in the exam is, after the student writes the paper, it goes for evaluation. And there also the person who does the evaluation will have his or her own opinions of what is important, what is not important. And in this, the student is getting squeezed in. What happens when we add the element of education objective is, when we state the education objective, it is not only stated, it is also shared with the students, with the teachers, with the evaluators, with the paper setters. Everybody in the academic ecosystem is aware of what the objectives are, what the student is expected to learn and perform, and what the question is expected, what the answer is, what is the expected answer for a question. So what happens is, when you write the objective, it improves communication. It improves educational communication. So this is one of the most important factors for writing the objectives. The reason why I'm stressing on so much on educational objectives is, as a tool, this is the most important tool for educational planning. So these are the 3 tools that I discussed about. One is about the curriculum spiral. Second is the basic teaching model. And third is the Bloom's taxonomy. These are the 3 basic tools which any teacher, any educationist must be aware of. And these are very important tools for whether it is on-site teaching or whether it is online teaching. Now let me look at some technological tools for balancing the academic quality. Again, here I have 3 tools. One tool for understanding how the learner engagement and the interactiveness of the learning resource is important for learning. This could be either online or it could even be on-site learning. Here we have a model called as Collins-McNaught Learning Engagement Model. Very briefly, what it states is, there are 2 variables. One is how the students are engaged, how much the students are engaged in the learning task, whether they are inclusive or not inclusive. Second is, what is the interactivity that the resource that we are giving, it provides to the students. taking these two into consideration at the very basic level, when the students are not much engaged and when the resource is not very interactive, what could maximum happen is the students are looking at the text and images online like it is happening now and maybe making some notes of it. So this is the very basic engagement model. Beyond this, what could happen is the students are set some summative task. At the end of the session or at the end of the course, you are expected to be able to perform this. And the resource that is given to them is slightly interactive. There's a minimal interaction which is happening there. The students can use it as they like. They can use it the way they want. And they have the flexibility to operate on their own. So this is the text or images which have some interactivity. And when the task is already set, the students know what they are expected to perform. And this becomes, this brings about a little more engagement of the students. They are more inclusive for their learning. The third aspect of this is when the students are given creative tasks. The students are not only told that this is the only thing that you will be tested for, the students can themselves state what is the kind of activity that they can be tested about, or what they can be tested for, or what they want to learn. And the resource that they are given is highly interactive. It could be something like you have artificial intelligence, or you could have something like simulator, any of these things. And this is a learning which is called as immersive learning, where the students are immersed in learning and they are networked for learning. In fact, if you look at the fourth industrial revolution, it gives a lot of importance for networking among learners. Like learning is not something which would happen individually in silos. It will happen by collaboration, coordination, where the boundaries of the physical, the technological, and the biological, all these things get submerged into one. And that is what is immersive learning. This is going to be the future of learning. Not only the future of learning, the future of the business also, and the future of production also, the future of industry, everything of the future, the fourth industrial revolution. So this is one tool for understanding how learning can happen. The second tool that I would be, that I want to present here is, as a teacher, how do we migrate to the online learning? What has happened is suddenly we were forced to go to the online learning without much assistance, without much planning, without much maybe understanding of how it works. Suddenly we were compelled to migrate, and we felt, in fact, I also felt a lot of uncertainty when I was sitting in front of the camera. So if we understand what are the phases through which we can transition, we can shift into the online learning, it becomes easier for the teachers to adapt to the online atmosphere. For this, there is a tool which I'll be presenting to you called as the Summer Framework. The first level is where I substitute my classroom teaching to in front of the camera. So what I will do is I will be giving the same lecture that I was giving in the classroom, but now I am giving in the front of the camera using a web conferencing platform. Like I'll be using Zoom or WebEx or whatever. I'm sitting in front of the camera and talking in front of the camera. The other side, the students are there listening as if it is like in the classroom. Not much difference. This is substitution. I'm only substituting one platform to another platform. The first phase. In the second phase, I start adding something. It is called as augmentation phase. So once I have developed some kind of confidence and capability in being present in front of the camera, then I start adding some kind of screen sharing, whatever I'm doing now. I may share a PowerPoint presentation during lecture, and at the end of the lecture, I may give a Google Doc for feedback to get the feedback from the students how the learning has happened. So this is called as augmentation, and this augmentation will bring about some enhancement for the learning. These are the two basic things. So beyond augmentation, what can happen is that I can modify the entire thing. Like for example, I need not be always present in front of the camera. What I can do is I can use some open educational resources. For example, before I start the class, even prior to the class, what I can send some learning materials for the students. I can tell them, okay, you can read these things and come back, or you can watch these videos and come back, or anything. They come prepared for the class. And when they come to the class also, it is something like I have a small class and I make a presentation. In between, I can add some questions in between the PowerPoint. For example, earlier I was only using PowerPoint as a continuous thing. Now I have added, or I have embedded some questions in the PowerPoint. Unless the students answer that, the PowerPoint will not move forward. Or the video which I have given to the students, I have embedded some questions in between. And unless the students answer the question, that video will not move forward. So these are some of the things which I can modify. And this can be used on a platform like Google Classroom. It is something like a suite where I use various components, various applications. So this is modification. And the ultimate in this would be where I do the redefinition. Now, what I have done is, in the modification, I have used the resources which were used by somebody else, which were already present. So what I do in the redefinition is, I develop a learning management system. I develop my own videos, I develop my own assessment, I develop my own reading materials, I develop my entire course and present it on the learning management system. So this becomes redefinition. This is the way the transition can happen from the sudden shift in front of the camera to developing a learning management system. Now, one thing is very clear from the classroom experience, without going through these phases, it would not be easy for anybody to migrate to preparing an LMS. Like, for example, I was doing only the classroom teaching, and now do I do completely LMS without going through the phases? Not very easy. It becomes very difficult, because each of these phases, each of these stages give us some experience where we understand what were our lacunae, how we have improved, so that we settle down into the online ecosystem, in the online environment. It was something which was not very familiar for us. For those of whom it was familiar, they can directly go, they can directly shift. But for a majority of us who are not very conversant or familiar, there is a way of transitioning. This is the second tool which I wanted to share with you. And the third tool is important because it is not just the content of learning which is important, but also the psychology of learners and teachers which is important. When we migrate to, say, online learning, initially there were a lot of issues, like when I'll tell you my own example. When I was sitting in front of the camera first time, I could not see anybody, and it was like in a dark room, without knowing what I am doing, how I am speaking, where I am speaking, completely kind of disoriented feeling. So these are kind of feeling which would be there psychologically for many of us. Even for the students, we may say that the students are tech savvy, they use these smartphones, they are very familiar with that. They are familiar with that. They are familiar with the smartphone for whatever activities they are familiar for. They are not familiar for learning. They are familiar for other things. So therefore, we'll have to make them familiar for the learning also. How do we organize this as a kind of standard operative procedure? There's one more tool called as Simon's 5 stages. That is what I'm going to very briefly show. Initially, what we have to do is we have to create a kind of welcome situation where the students are told how to access the internet resources, which is a site, which is a link, how to access it, and motivate the students also to join into the classroom. We may say that many of the times the students log in, and after that, where they are, we don't know. This is a lot of feeling which many of the teachers have, that the students log in, after that we do not have much of a grip on what is happening later. So for that, motivation is important. If we create motivation, interest, that kind of a logging off, physically, technically they are logged in, physically they are logged off, it may not happen. So this is the first level in psychologically getting tuned to the online teaching learning, both for the teachers and for the learners. The second phase in this would be to host. Now, hosting is where we have a number of students. In fact, if it was a class which we already have taken, where the students know one another, it becomes easier. But we also have classes where the students may not know one another. So here you create a kind of online socialization, because the learning is a social activity, and even the online learning has to be social activity. The students will have to interact with one another for learning, just as they would interact in a classroom, in a physical classroom. So creating this kind of socialization is the next. So without this, it becomes very difficult for the teacher to manage also. The third level in this is where the actual learning would happen from the teacher's end, where the information exchange is there, the teacher presents the classes. It could be in any of the ways. It could be through the web conferencing, it could be through some web discussions, it could be some group interactions, it could any of these things which happen, and the teacher is leading this learning. Teacher is a leader. And the majority of the activity, learning activity, happens in this phase. So beyond this phase also there are certain things where the teachers facilitate knowledge construction, where the students interact with one another. Now, one thing that we have seen is most of the applications that, whether it is Zoom or WebEx or Google Meet, whatever it is, basically these are seen to be the tools for making one-way presentation. They also have some facility where you can create a breakout rooms where the students can be assigned particular groups. They can interact in those smaller groups and come back and again interact in a plenary. So these are the things which will generate knowledge construction, where the students will have to be connected with one another at a very personal level. So this the teacher has to facilitate. This is the fourth phase, fourth stage in the online learning. And the fifth stage, where the students become independent learners. On their own, they can be learning. That is where the teacher will be guiding them how to go further into learning. So these are the 5 stages into where the online learning can be organized. The SOP for creating an online learning environment, the 3 tools which I have discussed. One is the Collins-McNutt learning engagement model, where the students, we understand how the students are getting engaged. Second is the summer model, how the teacher can transition from the conventional teaching to online teaching ecosystem. And third, creating the online learning environment by using the Simon's 5-stage model. So these are the 3 technological tools. Now going further, we'll see what are the emerging approaches to teaching and learning. Basically, we all know that learning online is either synchronous, which happens simultaneously like it is happening now, or asynchronous. Asynchronous is where perhaps the recording of this can be archived somewhere, and somebody who was not present here or who was present here but wants to again watch it again can see it. Asynchronous, the teacher and the learners are not in the same time frame. In asynchronous, in synchronous, teacher and learners are in the same time frame. These are the 2 technological approaches. Let me give you some examples, very basic. Synchronous uses telephone, as teacher and student can interact over telephone, or it could be a live chat, it could be on WhatsApp chat, it could be a streaming video as it is happening now, or it could be a web conferencing. The difference between streaming video and web conferencing is streaming video is one way, which only the participants will be listening and the presenter will be presenting. Web conferencing will have multiple nodes where the participants can interact with one another. So it is like having a small group discussion. So these can happen synchronous. Asynchronous is something where something is already prepared and it is kept there, like a discussion board. Sometimes discussion board can also be synchronous. Discussion board is like you have a chat box. Into that, the teacher starts a discussion lead, and the students at their own time of convenience can respond to that. It is like an assignment which is given to the students. Online it is present, and the participants keep on presenting their views, their opinions, their learnings at different times. So this is called a discussion board. And downloadable videos can be downloaded as and when required. A slide presentation, whatever the slides are presented, can also be archived. And the email communication, email a person can send at a particular time and can be seen at a different time. And finally, you also have blogs, wikis, or tweets, which can be asynchronous also. So these are some of the asynchronous models of learning. Now coming to how do we map these for on a traditional model? In the traditional model, what we say is learning can be, the teaching methods can be classified into 4 different areas depending on 2 variables. One is learner autonomy, second is the group size. Now here on the left, you can see the learner autonomy is less, and here you can see the group size is large, group size is more, learner autonomy is more. So depending on this, you can classify the synchronous, asynchronous models and give some examples. When the learner autonomy is less and the group size is large, you can have synchronous model, web streaming, and podcast. Podcast is equivalent of the audio equivalent of web streaming, or asynchronous can be recorded audio or video, whatever is there. When the learner autonomy is still less and the group size becomes little small, yes, synchronous, you can have telephone, live chat, or WhatsApp, and asynchronous could be something like recorded audio or video. Then when the learner autonomy becomes a little more, when the learner has flexibility and independence of learning, but the group size is relatively large, the synchronous model could be web conferencing, discussion board, blog, or wiki. And the asynchronous could be something like a group mail, discussion board, blog, tweets, which we already discussed. And when we go for learner autonomy being more and the group size being small, it generally is mostly asynchronous. And these are the examples that we have for asynchronous small size group. So this is basing on the traditional model. Now, to conclude, some of the applications for some particular occasion. Now, what is happening is we are using the web streaming model as a major source of our communication, and the other requirements of traditional teaching, for example, you need to have a group discussion, you need to have assignment submission, you need to have some intergroup activity. All these things are sometimes not taken care of in this model of only web streaming. So for that, there are some specific applications for specific purposes. Very basically, I'll be presenting to you what these applications are. For example, for communication or discussion, what is happening now, for the web streaming, you can have Google Meet, Skype, WebEx, Zoom, and many others are there. You would be familiar with some other also. This is only for communication, for streaming. And if you want to make presentation, of course, there are PowerPoint is there, which is more ubiquitous. Then there could be something like Google Slide. Then you have keynotes, or you can have something called as Nearpod or Prezi, Powtoon. Nearpod was the one which I was mentioning earlier, where within the slides, you can embed question. And unless the student answers that question, the slide will not move further. So the student will have to go back and read and come. It creates a kind of interactivity, individual interactivity for the learning. And Powtoon can even create some kind of animations within the presentation. So these are some of the less known presentation software. Then of course, there for group collaboration, to create collaboration among the students, where the students themselves discuss among themselves or with the teacher and make a presentation. For example, you have given an assignment, and each individual assignment will have to be submitted so that everybody will know who has submitted what assignment. For this, there are applications like Flipgrid or Padlet or Trello. These are free, available for certain, it's not that the entire features are available. With limited features, these are available free for use. Then if you have to use the blogging site, which can be used for discussion board also, you have Blogger or Medium. Then coming to the document sharing. For example, you want to send a document, a smaller size document, which can be edited also by the students and recirculated. It could be in the form of Etherpad, Google Doc, or MS Office 365. If the document that you are sending is larger, then you can use Dropbox or Google Drive. Google Drive can also be something like a cloud space for our storage. We can store. Say, for example, I want to make this presentation and I'm traveling somewhere. I can save this in my Google Drive and I can access it on my smartphone, and from there I can make the presentation also. So this is some of the facility which is for sharing of the file. And then for note taking for the students, there is something called as Google Keep and OneNote. These are also quite useful, where the entire notes can be organized chapter wise, topic wise, all those things can be done. And then comes the more interactiveness. Like for example, just like the teacher is using a board, blackboard in the classroom, the teacher can use here on screen whiteboard, where the writing can be done, drawing can be done, and if there is an image, some marking can be done, labeling can be done. It can be something like you have the conventional blackboard. So for that, some of the examples you have, Google Jamboard is there, then Annotator is there, Miro is there, a Stamboard is there. These can be used as the whiteboard. Then of course you have screen recording and editing facility. If you are going for LMS, or if you are going to develop your own video, there have to be some method of recording the video. Recording the video of, maybe this Zoom also can record the video, but further editing, some features will have to be there, where you can cut something, or we can add something, you can insert something, you can insert some video within this video. All those things are possible in the screen recording and editing applications like Camtasia, Flashback, or FreeCam. These are also some limited amount of features are available free. And classrooms like Google Classroom, BrainCert, WizIQ, these are available, where you can create a complete classroom of an online virtual classroom. And finally, the learning management system, where Edmodo, Moodlewix, or WordPress are available, which you can use as the platform to develop and design any your course. Designing and developing is free, but when you ask for the cloud for saving this, only a limited amount of space will be available free, but for the rest of the things, it has to be paid. So these are the things, some of the applications which are specific for some specific purposes. What I want to stress upon here is that online teaching is not simply using the Zoom platform. It is simply not using some Google Classroom. It is a kind of complete system which will have to understand the philosophy of it, how to create the online platform ecosystem, how to feel comfortable, how we have to feel ourselves comfortable there, how we have to make our students comfortable there, and create an atmosphere which is almost similar to the conventional learning. Because conventional learning is something which is realistic learning. Whatever we are doing online is something which is an add-on. It is not the real, it is a virtual. So how much we can bridge the gap between the virtual and real, for that we need to go an extra step, make extra effort, try to understand what are the appropriate tools and applications, and use them appropriately. Only then there is a possibility of narrowing the gap between the real and virtual. Otherwise, the virtual teaching becomes something where the students might simply log on technically, and physically they can log off, or even psychologically they can log off. But that is not the purpose why we have to make this online presentation. Online presentation is now become a kind of necessity. The UGC also is saying up to 30% can be online, and many of the apex bodies are also accepting this online, and many of the universities also have fallen back into this online because of the necessity. And when the necessity is there, we should not use the necessity for a wrong purpose. We have to use it the way it has to be used. With this in the intention, I have made this presentation. If there is any question, I can take. Before that, these are the objectives which I started with in the beginning. One is to state, you will be able to state the disruptive processes which influence our routine. Retrospect on the changes in the academic practices in the past year, and recall your responses to technology intrusion. These you already have experienced. It's not something which you are doing new for this session, but what is new I expect from the session is that at the end of the session, you'll be able to relate the 3 tools of academic planning, including the spiral of curriculum, the Bloom's taxonomy, and the basic model of teaching, and list the technological tools for balancing the academic quality. For example, the Colin McNaught learning engagement model, the summer framework for transition into digital learning, and the Salmon's 5 stages for creating the digital ecosystem. And of course, tabulate the applications which are relevant to specific academic situations. These are the objectives which I had stated, and you'll have to say how much effective it was when you look at these things and how much you are able to perform these things. If there are any questions, I can take now. The admin can open the questions. And before that, I would like to thank all of you again, the Modern College of Pharmacy and the management, Dr. Praveen Chaudhary and his team of teachers, and
Thank you very much, sir, for your words of wisdom. Sir, we all teachers are trying to get aligned in this paradigm shift. And I'm sure after attending your session, everyone will get help from it, how to get aligned in this shift. Now the session is open for discussion. Any queries? Please raise your hand if you have any queries. Unmute yourselves. Yes. Okay. Thank you so much, sir, again. Sir has explained about innovative pedagogical approaches, relationship between teaching learning methods, assessment methods, and learning objectives, taxonomy of educational objectives and various domains of learning, importance of educational objectives, and framework of technology integration. Thank you so much, sir. Kindly accept this virtual bouquet on behalf of convener Dr. P.D. Chaudhary and coordinator of this STTP, Dr. V.V. Chopde, Modern College of Pharmacy, Nigri, as a token of appreciation.
thank you, Dr. Chaudhary and Dr. Chopde, and thank you all.
Sir, kindly accept your certificate as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. It will be a great pleasure for us to listen to you again in our future events. Thank you.